The docking bay smelled of heated metal, engine coolant, and something sweet yet sharp. An alien spice carried on the recycled air. Captain Daniel Hayes stepped off the transport ship, boots echoing against the polished black floor of the Imperial Palace's private spaceport. Above him, banners of silver and blue rippled in the artificial breeze, their alien script glowing faintly in the dim light. Armed guards lined both sides of the entry corridor. Their armor was smooth, mirror-like, and entirely alien tall. Narrow visors gave no hint of eyes behind them. Their movements were slow, but deliberate, and every one of them tracked Daniel with the same cold precision a sniper might use on a target. Daniel's orders had been simple. Deliver a message from the Human Alliance to the Princess of the Zareth Empire. But nothing about the way these guards looked at him felt simple. At the end of the corridor, massive crystal doors stood shut. They shimmered with embedded light, changing colors in slow waves, and two guards moved in perfect unison too. Push them open the moment the doors parted. Daniel's breath caught the scale of the chamber beyond was overwhelming. The ceiling soared higher than any human cathedral, with silver beams arching like the ribs of a giant beast. Waterfalls of glowing liquid fell from unseen heights into shallow crystal pools that lined the walls at the far end. On a raised platform carved from a single piece of violet stone sat the princess. She was young, maybe only a few years older than Daniel. Yet her presence filled the entire hall. Her skin was a flawless shade of soft violet, glowing faintly. Under the cascading lights, long silver-white hair spilled over her shoulders in a smooth wave, catching tiny reflections from her crystal crown. Her eyes, deep, bioluminescent sapphire, locked on him the moment he entered. He walked forward, slowly, every step echoing in the vast space. The nobles seated along the sides murmured quietly, their words hushed but their curiosity clear. No human had stood in this hall for years. Daniel stopped at the ceremonial point, exactly 7 paces from the throne. He tapped the translator at his collar and began in the carefully prepared phrases of galactic common. Your Highness. He didn't get to finish. The princess tilted her head slightly, her lips curling into a faint smirk when she spoke. Her voice was soft but carried through the hall like music, and she didn't use the common language. Her words flowed in the Zareth royal tongue, rich with tones and inflections no machine could match. And though Daniel's translator stayed silent, he understood every single word. Your accent is terrible, human. A ripple of laughter moved through the nobles like a breeze through tall grass. Even some of the guards shifted slightly, as if smiling behind their emotionless visors. Daniel kept his face still, but inside, something tightened. She thought she was speaking to a man who couldn't understand, mocking him to his face in a language humans were forbidden to learn. He let the moment hang. The princess's eyes glimmered, waiting for his awkwardness, expecting him to stumble or look to the translator for help. Instead, Daniel straightened his back and answered her in flawless, unbroken Zareth. Forgive me, Your Highness. I will try to speak more clearly. The silence that followed was instant and absolute. The laughter stopped mid-breath. Dozens of alien eyes locked on him in disbelief. The princess's smirk faded as quickly as it had appeared. Her sapphire eyes widened just enough to betray her surprise. No one moved. Even the sound of the waterfall seemed quieter. An older noble, his armor marked with gold trim, stepped forward from the side. His voice was sharp, accusing, impossible. No human has the right or the mind to speak our tongue. Daniel turned his head toward the man and repeated the greeting again. Slower this time, each syllable perfectly shaped. His tone was calm, respectful, but each word landed like a challenge. Gasps broke out across the hall. A guard near the far door shifted his stance, not in aggression, but in confusion. The princess's voice returned, this time in the common language. Where did you learn that? Daniel allowed himself the smallest of smiles. From someone who believed words can build more than weapons. Her gaze sharpened, as if trying to read every hidden meaning in his answer. For the first time since he entered, she leaned back. In her throne, not in dismissal, but in thought. "Then speak, Captain Hayes," she said slowly. "Let us see if your tongue is as sharp as your courage." The nobles leaned forward. Sensing a shift in the air, the human was no longer just a messenger. He had become something more dangerous, something unpredictable, and, somewhere deep in her expression, the princess looked as though she was no longer deciding whether to mock him, but whether to trust him.
The hall remained tense, as if the air itself was holding still. Every noble, every guard, even the shimmering waterfalls seemed to pause. The princess's sapphire eyes were fixed on Daniel, her gaze sharp but unreadable. "Very well," she said in her native tongue, her voice slow and deliberate. "Let us see if you can keep up." "Human." The translator at Daniel's collar stayed silent. It couldn't process a language it didn't have in its database. But Daniel didn't need it. He understood every word. She leaned forward slightly, her crown catching the light. "What does your people's flag mean? The colors, the symbols. Tell me in my language." Daniel didn't blink. He answered in perfect Zareth, describing the deep blue for the oceans of Earth, the white for peace, and the stars for unity across the colonies. He shaped each syllable as he'd been taught years ago by someone who risked their life to share it with him. Murmurs rippled through the court. A few nobles tilted their heads, listening more closely now than before. The princess gave a small, curious smile, not mockery this time, but something like intrigue. "And how," she asked, "does a human soldier learn words forbidden by our laws?" Daniel's reply was calm. "I was taught by a friend who believed our worlds would be stronger together than apart." The princess's smile faded, replaced by a flicker of something sharper. Suspicion. "And where is this friend now?" Daniel hesitated. "She's gone. Your people made sure of that." The nobles whispered louder now, their voices overlapping. The guards shifted, some glancing toward the princess for a signal. Her expression didn't change, but her next words came faster, with more complex phrasing, testing the limits of his knowledge. She spoke of ancient wars, of treaties broken, of places whose names were rarely spoken outside royal circles. Daniel followed every word, answering in kind, matching her tone with careful respect, but never lowering his gaze. He could feel the room shifting. The laughter was gone, replaced by something heavier. A sudden movement caught his eye. At the far end of the hall, two armored figures slipped inside through a side entrance. Their armor wasn't palace guard issue, sleeker, darker, and armed with compact weapons meant for close combat. They didn't take positions like normal guards. Instead, they lingered in the shadows, their eyes locked on him. Daniel's instinct screamed a warning. This wasn't just a test of language. Something else was in motion. The princess noticed his brief glance toward the intruders. Her voice in the common tongue was low, meant only for him. "You see them too." Daniel nodded slightly. "They're not here for polite conversation." She tilted her head as if thinking. Then she switched back to her native language, speaking loud enough for the entire hall. "Tell me, Captain Hayes, if you could save only one, your people or mine, which would you choose?" It was a trap, and they both knew it. Answering in favor of his own would insult her court. Answering in favor of hers would make him a traitor in the eyes of any human listening. Daniel took a breath and answered in Zareth, voice steady. "I would save the one that needed saving. In war, need is greater than flags." The princess's eyes narrowed, but not in anger, more like she was reevaluating everything she thought she knew about him. Before she could respond, one of the shadowed intruders moved. His hand went to his weapon, the barrel rising toward Daniel. The princess's voice cut through the air in a command so sharp it almost rang. "Stand down." The intruder froze mid-motion, his visor turning toward her. For a moment, Daniel thought he might ignore the order. But then the man lowered his weapon slowly, like a predator retreating. The princess leaned back in her throne, eyes still locked on Daniel. "You will return tomorrow," she said in the common tongue. "And when you do, you will tell me everything about this friend of yours." It wasn't a request. It was an order wrapped in curiosity and something else, a hint of danger. Daniel gave a small nod. "I'll be here, Your Highness." As the guards escorted him out, the whisper started again, but different now. Not laughter, not dismissal, something closer to fascination. And Daniel knew one thing for certain. The game had changed. He had her attention. The palace corridors were quieter than the throne room, but Daniel could still feel eyes on him. The guards leading him didn't speak, their footsteps a steady rhythm against the polished crystal floors. Every now and then, one would glance back, not with open hostility, but with the caution of someone escorting a dangerous animal. They passed tall windows that looked out over the capital city. From here it was beautiful. Silver spires glowing in the dusk, airships drifting between towers, and streams of bright light running along the skyways. But Daniel knew beauty could be a mask, and he could feel the unease growing in his chest. The guard stopped outside the guest quarters. A door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a room far more luxurious than he expected. A bed draped in fine fabric, a table set with fruit and wine, walls etched with glowing patterns that shifted slowly like breathing. "You will remain here," one of the guards said in the common tongue. "The princess will see you tomorrow." Daniel stepped inside, and the door closed behind him with a final sounding click. For a moment, he simply stood there, scanning the room. It was beautiful, yes, but too neat, too arranged. The table was set for one, the bed untouched, the air smelling faintly of something metallic beneath the perfume of flowers. He crossed to the far wall and tapped lightly on it. Solid, but not quite. The sound was a little too hollow in one spot, like there was space behind it. Daniel's instincts flared. He crouched and ran his fingers along the seam between two panels. There, almost invisible, a small lens embedded in the design, glowing faintly. A hidden camera. He turned away, pretending not to notice, and moved to the table. He poured a glass of the wine, but didn't drink. Instead, he used the reflection on the liquid surface to watch the corner of the ceiling. Another lens. So they were watching him. Not surprising. But the fact they didn't bother to hide it well meant they wanted him to know. He sat on the bed, thinking, if they were this interested in him tonight, what would tomorrow's meeting bring? A faint sound broke his thoughts. Not from the door, but from the ventilation grate. A whisper. "Human, keep your voice down." Daniel froze. A pair of pale eyes appeared behind the grate, watching him. The voice came again, low and urgent. "They will not let you leave after tomorrow. You are in danger." Daniel kept his expression neutral, in case the cameras were watching his face. "Who are you?" he murmured. "A friend," the voice answered. "One who remembers the one who taught you our tongue." His pulse quickened. "Then you know her name," he said softly. "Yes," came the reply, "but we have no time for names. They suspect you know more than you should. There are those in the court who fear what you can do with our language." Daniel glanced at the door. And what do they plan to do about it? The eyes behind the grate didn't blink. "Remove you, quietly, before the princess learns too much." He leaned back slightly, as if simply relaxing, so the cameras wouldn't read his posture as plotting, when the voice hesitated. Before dawn, the grate shifted slightly and the pale eyes vanished. Daniel was alone again, the room silent except for the faint hum of the walls. He stood, walking to the window. From here, the city still looked peaceful, but now he saw it differently. Every shadow between the towers felt like a place an enemy could wait. Every light a spotlight searching for him. If they were coming before dawn, he had only hours, and no allies he could trust except, maybe, the princess herself, who might be just as dangerous. He turned back toward the bed and sat down, mind already racing. If they wanted him gone, he would have to decide, escape the palace tonight, or survive whatever they had planned for him tomorrow. Either way, the game had changed again. The palace was silent, except for the low hum of the energy lines running through its crystal walls. Daniel sat on the bed, boots still on, waiting. The hours until dawn fell heavy, each minute a reminder that someone might already be moving toward his door. He considered trying to slip out, but leaving a place like this wasn't as simple as walking through the halls. The palace was a fortress disguised as a work of art. Every corridor had guards, every archway a surveillance point. The warning from the vent whispered in his mind. They will not let you leave after tomorrow. He checked his watch. Less than 3 hours until first light. If they were coming, it would be soon. A faint sound reached him, the almost inaudible slide of metal against metal. His hand went to the small concealed pistol at his belt as he rose silently. The sound came again, this time from the hallway outside his door. Then nothing. Daniel crossed the window, running his fingers over the frame. It wasn't made to open, but the seam was thin enough that maybe... A soft chime broke the stillness. The door to his quarters slid open just enough for a slim figure to slip inside. It wasn't a guard. The princess stood there, dressed not in her royal gown but in a fitted dark coat, her silver-white hair braided back. Her eyes, still that piercing sapphire, scanned the room before settling on him. "You're awake," she said quietly in the common tongue. Daniel didn't lower his pistol. Not exactly a night for deep sleep. She stepped further inside, letting the door seal behind her. "I know about the attempt," she said. Her tone was calm, but her gaze was sharp. "I didn't order it." Daniel studied her face, searching for any sign of a lie. "You expect me to believe you?" Her lips curved faintly, not a smile, more like a challenge. "If I wanted you dead, Captain Hayes, you wouldn't have made it past the first guard on your way here." She crossed the room slowly, her movements precise. "There are factions in the court who do not want me speaking with you again. They see danger in what you know, in what you can say in our tongue." Daniel kept his voice low. "Then why are you here? To warn me?" Her eyes softened, but only slightly. "To decide if you are worth the trouble of protecting." Before he could reply, a noise came from the hallway. Heavy, synchronized footsteps, the kind soldiers made when moving with purpose. The princess moved closer to him, her voice dropping to a whisper. "They are here now." The door panel flashed red. Someone outside was overriding the lock. Without hesitation, she reached for his arm. "Follow me." Daniel didn't argue. She crossed to the far wall and pressed her hand against an etched symbol in the crystal. The panel shimmered and dissolved into a narrow, hidden passage. They slipped inside just as the main door slid open and 2 armored figures entered the room. From the darkness of the passage, Daniel could see them search, weapons drawn, eyes scanning every corner. One of them tapped the wall panel, checking the feed from the hidden cameras. The princess leaned close to Daniel's ear, speaking in her native tongue now. "You have one night to prove you are not my enemy. At dawn, I will bring you to the place your teacher once stood." Her words stirred a dozen questions in his mind, but there was no time to ask. She led him through the twisting passage, the walls glowing faintly under her touch at each turn. The air was cooler here, carrying the scent of stone and something older, something untouched by the palace's polished perfection. After several minutes, they emerged into a small chamber lit by a single shaft of moonlight from above. "This is where you will stay until morning," she said. Daniel glanced at her. "And after that?" Her eyes caught the pale light, making them almost glow. "After that, you will speak truths the court does not want to hear." She turned to leave, her coat swaying with each step. Before she vanished into the shadows, she added one last sentence in her native tongue, one that carried both a warning and something like trust. "Do not waste the chance I am giving you." Daniel stood alone in the moonlit chamber, listening to the faint sound of the hidden door sealing shut. Somewhere above, the palace still slept, but in the halls outside his reach, the game for his life, and maybe much more, had already begun. The first light of dawn filtered through the narrow slit in the chamber wall. Daniel had not slept. He sat against the cool stone, pistol in hand, listening to the faint hum of the palace far above. When the hidden door finally opened, it was not a guard who stepped through. It was the princess herself. Her coat from the night before was gone. She now wore a regal gown of deep silver and blue, its threads glowing faintly with every movement. "You're still alive," she said, her tone calm but carrying weight. "You passed your first test." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Test?" That felt more like an execution postponed. Her lips curved just slightly. In this court, they're the same thing. She motioned for him to follow. They walked through the hidden corridors in silence, her steps precise and unhurried. The air here was cooler, the walls lined with faintly glowing runes older than the palace itself. When they emerged into the main hall, it was already filled. Nobles lined both sides, their faces sharp with curiosity and suspicion. The guards stood in perfect formation, their armor gleaming in the morning light. The princess ascended the dais and took her throne, her silver-white hair catching every flicker of light. Daniel remained at the center of the floor, every eye on him. A tall noble with gold-trimmed armor stepped forward. "This human's presence is an insult," he declared in the common tongue. "He speaks words that are forbidden to his kind. He must be removed." The princess raised a hand, silencing him without looking. Then she turned to Daniel and, in her native language, spoke clearly. "Tell this court who taught you our tongue." The air grew heavier. This was a question they all wanted answered, the one that could condemn him or worse. Daniel met her gaze, choosing his words carefully. "She was a healer, not a soldier. She saved my life when your empire's warships burned the colony where I was posted. She believed language could bridge more than borders." Gasps broke out in the hall, not at his words alone, but at the fact he spoke them in flawless Zareth. The gold-trimmed noble stepped closer, eyes narrow. "A lie. No healer would betray her people by teaching you." Daniel's voice stayed calm. "She didn't betray her people. She tried to save them. And me? But you killed her before she could." The whispers turned to sharp murmurs. Some nobles looked uncomfortable. Others looked eager, like predators catching the scent of blood. The princess leaned forward, studying him as though weighing something far greater than truth or lies. What was her name? Daniel hesitated. He thought of the night she died, the sound of the bombardment, the way she pressed a medallion into his hand before pushing him toward the escaped transport. "I'll tell you, but not to them," he said, his voice low. The court erupted in protest. The gold-trimmed noble pointed at him. "He defies you. He defies the law." The princess stood, her presence cutting through the noise like a blade. "Silence." The hall fell quiet instantly. She stepped down from the dais, stopping just an arm's length from Daniel. Her eyes locked on his. "Then you will tell me alone. But until then, you will remain under my protection." The gold-trimmed noble's jaw tightened. "That will not stop those who act without your blessing, princess." Her voice turned colder. "Then it will be their last mistake." She turned back to Daniel, switching again to common tongue, so the entire hall would understand. "You will walk this palace freely. But understand, every step will be watched." Daniel inclined his head. "I've been watched since I stepped off the ship." Something in her expression shifted. A hint of respect, perhaps, or something more dangerous. "Good. Then perhaps you understand the game you are in." The guards opened the great doors, and sunlight spilled across marble. The court session was over, but Daniel knew this was far from an ending. The princess had just put a shield over him in front of the entire court, and in doing so, painted a target on them both. As he followed her out of the hall, he caught the faintest whisper from the gold-trimmed noble to one of the guards. "Before he leaves this palace, he will vanish." Daniel didn't react, but he knew one thing. His time to earn her trust and survive was running out. By mid-afternoon, the palace felt different. Daniel could move through its grand halls without an escort, but the promise of freedom was an illusion. Every corridor had pairs of guards who watched him with blank expressions, and he could feel the weight of hidden cameras following his every step. He passed open balconies that overlooked the capital. The air was warm and carried the scent of flowers from the sky gardens. Somewhere beyond those towers, the streets buzzed with life he wasn't allowed to see. It was nearly sunset when a young servant approached him, bowing slightly. "The princess requests your presence." "Alone?" Daniel followed without hesitation. They passed through a lesser-used wing of the palace, the polished crystal walls giving way to plain stone corridors that looked much older. Finally, they reached a narrow side gate. The princess was waiting there, dressed not in her ceremonial gown, but in a simple dark cloak, her silver-white braid over one shoulder. "You came," she said softly, her eyes scanning the shadows. "I wasn't sure if you'd risk it." Daniel stepped closer. "You didn't exactly tell me where we're going." Her gaze returned to him, calm but firm. "Somewhere outside these walls. Somewhere the court can't listen." She led him through the gate and down a sloping path into the city. The air beyond the palace was different, less controlled, filled with the hum of hovercraft, the call of market sellers, and the clatter of unfamiliar machines. The streets narrowed as they walked, and the tall silver towers gave way to smaller stone buildings with painted signs. Finally, they ducked into a quiet courtyard, where a single fountain trickled under the dim light of hanging lanterns. The princess stopped beside the fountain and looked at him directly. "You want to know why I stopped him from killing you?" she said. Daniel crossed his arms. "It's been on my mind." She took a slow breath. "When you spoke our language, I knew you had learned it from someone close to the old ways, someone who remembered the truths our court tries to bury." He frowned. "And you care about those truths because—" Her eyes hardened. "Because the same court that fears you is trying to erase me. I am the heir, but only in name. They want me as a symbol, not a leader. If I do not act, I will be replaced or removed." Daniel studied her for a moment. "So protecting me is part of your own war." "It is the same war," she said quickly. "They fear knowledge, Captain Hayes. They fear bridges between worlds. And you are a bridge they cannot control." Before Daniel could answer, a shadow moved at the edge of the courtyard. Two figures in dark armor stepped from an archway, their weapons glinting in the lantern light. The princess's cloak swirled as she turned. "They followed us," she said under her breath. Daniel's hand went to his sidearm. "Yours or mine?" "Neither," she said, her voice sharp. "They belong to the faction that tried to kill you last night." The armored figures advanced without speaking. Daniel stepped in front of the princess, pistol raised. The first attacker moved fast, too fast for his size, swinging a short blade that sparked against Daniel's arm guard. Daniel shoved him back, fired once, and the blast dropped him to the ground. The second lunged for the princess, but she spun aside, the edge of her cloak catching his weapon. Daniel fired again, and the man stumbled, weapon clattering to the stones. Silence fell except for the fountain's steady trickle. The princess's breath came quickly, but her eyes were steady. "They will not stop," she said. "And now they know we are together." Daniel holstered his weapon. "Then we hit back before they get the next move." Her gaze met his, and for the first time, there was no barrier in her expression. "Tomorrow, I will take you to the place your teacher stood. If you are what I think you are, the court will never see it coming." They left the courtyard through a different path, shadows curling around them as the city lights flickered to life. Above, the palace loomed like a mountain of crystal and steel, beautiful, untouchable, and full of enemies waiting for them to return. The morning sky over the capital was pale gold when the princess led Daniel out of the palace. They rode in a sleek open hover carriage, silent guards at the front and back, the city's tallest towers sliding past. Daniel kept one hand near his weapon, though he doubted it would help if this was a trap. The princess sat beside him, her silver-white hair loose in the morning wind, her gaze fixed ahead. They left the city behind, the ground changing from smooth streets to open plains of pale grass. After half an hour, a shape appeared in the distance, a ring of stone pillars half buried in the earth, each carved with glowing runes. The carriage stopped at the edge of the site. The air here was cooler, carrying a strange hum that seemed to rise from the ground itself. The princess stepped out first. "This," she said, "is where your teacher stood, where she spoke truths the court wanted to erase." Daniel followed her into the circle. The runes brightened faintly as they walked, their light brushing his boots and casting shifting shadows. "I brought you here," she continued, "because if you speak what you know in this place, the runes will record it, and if the court tries to deny it later, the record will prove them liars." Daniel looked at her. "You trust me that much?" Her eyes held his. "I trust the choice I'm making, not the outcome." Before he could answer, a deep horn blast rolled across the plains. From the direction of the city, a line of riders approached fast, armored nobles, guards, and at their head, the gold-trimmed noble who had called for Daniel's removal. They dismounted at the edge of the stone circle. "This is illegal," the noble barked. "No human may speak in the Hall of Echoes without the court's blessing." The princess stepped forward, her voice like steel. "As heir to the throne, I give that blessing." The noble's glare shifted to Daniel. "Then speak, human, and prove to us all how dangerous your tongue truly is." Daniel looked at the princess once, then stepped into the center of the ring. The runes brightened under his feet, a soft hum filling the air. He began in the Zareth royal tongue, his voice clear and steady. He told them about the colony where his unit had been stationed, about the bombardment that had left dozens dead, about the Zareth healer who had saved him at the cost of her own life. He spoke her name, letting it hang in the air like a bell. The runes flared brighter, recording every syllable in lines of light that curled upward into the air. The gold-trimmed noble's face darkened. "A traitor's name has no place in our records." Daniel turned his gaze on him. She wasn't a traitor. She was a voice for peace, silenced by those who feared her words, the same way you fear mine. Gasps rippled through the assembled crowd. The runes glowed hotter, the light so bright it painted every face in silver and gold. The princess stepped to Daniel's side. "You fear him because he can speak to us without the filter of your lies. That fear is your weakness." The noble's hand went to his sword, but the guards around him hesitated. The rune's light was now almost blinding, and the air vibrated like the sky before a storm. When Daniel finished, the runes pulsed one final time, then the light shot upward into the clouds, sealing the record in whatever ancient vault this place connected to. Silence fell. The gold-trimmed noble lowered his hand, knowing too many had seen, too many had heard. The princess turned to the crowd. "Today, a human stood in the Hall of Echoes and spoke truth in our tongue. Remember that the next time you are told our worlds cannot understand each other." She looked at Daniel, her voice dropping so only he could hear. "You've just made enemies you can't count, and an ally you can't lose." They left the stone circle together, the court still murmuring behind them. Daniel knew the danger was far from over. But for the first time, it felt like the fight ahead was worth the risk. And the princess, walking at his side, no longer looked at him like a curiosity. She looked at him like a partner.